Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles, and today we're featuring a vehicle that isn't French. Really this time. Yes, I know, you can thank me in the comments. The World of Warships community contributors have just gotten their hands on the Swedish line of destroyers. Actually, Jingles, it's a European. No, it isn't. They're not fooling anybody. And I thought, what better way to celebrate this than to not actually show you the Swedish destroyers, and instead show you a Swedish tank. Actually, Jungles, it's a Swedish tank destroyer. Yes. I know that, you know that, everybody knows that, World of Tanks knows that, but if you try telling the Swedes that, they'll shut down your local IKEA, and then where would you go for your flat pack office furniture? Shrimpcraft here knows that too, but he doesn't care. He just loves his S1 so much, they could call it the Bolivian Navy on manoeuvres in the South Pacific if they wanted. It doesn't matter, as long as he can shoot things with it. Whatever you decide to label this thing, the one thing that we all pretty much have to agree on is that it is a remarkable piece of design and military technology. In the mid-1950s, the Swedes, who up until that point were relying on and still pretty happy with their modified versions of the British Centurion, decided that they needed something a little bit more future-proofed, up-to-date, to see them into the latter half of the 20th century. And given Sweden's unique military situation at the time, they needed something that was primarily defensive in nature. For some reason, Russia, the Swedes were concerned that they might have to fight a defensive battle against overwhelming numbers of enemy tanks. With that in mind, they developed a machine around a gun that would be capable of achieving one-shot kills against the most likely tank that it was going to face, T-72. And that would be very difficult to defeat from the front while capable of retreating as quickly as advancing while keeping the gun pointed towards the enemy. I've been inside one of these things. Well, not this thing. This is the prototype of the world-famous Swedish S-tank, which was developed from this prototype, and it really is a remarkable piece of machinery. The controls are duplicated across most of the crew positions, which means that it's entirely capable of being operated, if it has to, by a single crew person who would be able to operate the gun with a high degree of accuracy and drive the machine at full speed of up to 50 kilometers per hour, both forwards and backwards, all from the same crew position. The armour is pretty much an afterthought. In fact, it's mostly just there to stop the crew from falling out when it takes a corner at high speed. It's extremely thin, but because of the extreme sloping of the armour, it doesn't actually need to be that thick, because there's very little there for an armour-piercing projectile to actually be able to bite into in order to penetrate. Anything fired at the front of this tank is almost certainly just going to skip off that sloped armour. And apart from anything else, first you have to see the thing in order to be able to accurately fire shots at it. And this is an incredibly low-profile machine. It's way shorter than a Centurion, for example. And the hydraulic suspension is capable of lowering the machine a further 13 centimetres. When this thing's in a firing position, there's very little of the tank that is actually visible to shoot back at. So what the Swedes had ended up with was a machine that was highly likely to be achieving first shot kills on anything that was likely to be attacking it. T-72s and T-62s. And presented a minimal target profile to return fire, and even if it did get hit, its frontal armour was sloped at such extreme angles that any hits were likely to just ricochet clean off. It was an utterly revolutionary defensive tank. Of course, it was an utter disaster on the attack. I mean, it would have been absolutely hopeless. So it's probably lucky that the Swedes worked all of that imperialistic aggression out of their system in the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries. Norway, Finland, Estonia, Russia, Germany, Poland, Latvia, Denmark. I'm sure Sweden's very sorry, okay? The Swedes have chilled out a lot in the last couple of hundred years. These days, the only things we really have to concern ourselves with is the possibility that ABBA or Europe might get back together and go on comeback tours. Ooh, a little bit of hot Swede-on-Swede action there. Actually, that's something else that the Swedish are known for. Calm down, Jingles. This is a family show. You've said too much. Sorry. prime example here, by the way, of how this machine is able to utilise its unique design characteristics to shoot over a terrain feature like this small ridge, while exposing only the barest minimum of extremely sloped tank hull to attract return fire. Well, that's how it would work in reality. And World of Tanks is only loosely based on reality. In World of Tanks we have this thing that's called the armour overmatch mechanics, which put simply means that since this machine only actually has 30mm of frontal armour, anything with a 91mm or higher gun can penetrate that armour like a hot knife through butter, completely regardless of how well sloped the armour actually is. And this is a tier 8 machine, so there is no shortage of enemy tanks on 100, 105, 122 and 130mm and even higher caliber guns that only have to hit in order to penetrate and do damage, regardless of how well sloped the armour may be. Shrimpcraft scoring his third kill against an extremely overconfident Scorpion G, who presumably thought the battle was all over bar the shouting and it was just a question of who was going to claim the last couple of kills. And it really is just the last couple of kills, because the only two members of the team left alive are Shrimpcraft in the S1 and an SU-130PM. Both of them digging in for dear life in this bottom corner of the map. The team has completely collapsed. Fortunately for Shrimpcraft, the only member of the enemy team who seems to be reliably and consistently able to score hits on him is the P-44 Pantera, who has a 90mm gun, and is in fact the only member of the enemy team still alive that has a gun that cannot just overmatch his armour. The ISM could definitely have overmatched his armour. Everything else on the enemy team can overmatch his armour, but not the P-44, which is kind of lucky considering how many times the P-44 has hit him. Right now I'm starting to get the impression that the enemy team are beginning to regret. And there's another hit from the P-44, and again, no damage. It's just automatically ricocheting off the front of the hull. The gun is only 90mm in caliber, which is not more than 3 times the armour thickness. It's exactly 3 times the armour thickness, so only a partial overmatch occurs. And a partial overmatch just increases the angle of normalization. It's still way too steep an angle, even with partial overmatch for a 90mm gun to penetrate. So, yay for penetration mechanics. I mean, on the one hand, you're utterly screwed if anybody's shooting at you with, oh, I don't know, a Russian 122mm gun, a British or German 105mm gun, or a Russian 100mm gun. But anybody who only has a 90mm gun, like the P-44 or several of the American mediums, and tank destroyers, tough shit, sunshine. Should have brought a bigger gun. I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. It's very all or nothing, really, isn't it? And it's, well, like I said, it's only loosely based in reality, but it is what it is. If you can't take a joke, you shouldn't be playing Swedish tank destroyers. Shrimpcraft's had that damaged gun for a long time now, hasn't he? And he's not using his repair kit. I'm not quite sure what to think about that either. In fact, Shrimpcraft's reluctance to use his repair kit at all is going to be major cause for consternation later on in this battle. I don't want to spoil anything. You'll know it when you see it. You'll also know it because I'll be yelling at the screen. I mean, there's plenty of time. It's not like in the bad old days when you used the consumable and it was gone. It's on a cooldown. You get it back after 90 seconds. It's a premium repair kit. I don't understand why he's not using it to repair his gun. I mean, he can still use the gun, but it's damaged. It's going to affect the accuracy. And one of the best features of this machine, when it's in siege mode at least, is the accuracy of the gun. So I don't really understand why he's not using that repair kit. I mean, there are 2 enemy tanks remaining. There are 2 enemy tanks capping. Yeah, they're probably regretting the no cap kill all thing by now. They know exactly where those 2 enemy tanks are. There's plenty of time for him to use that repair kit, fix the gun, and have it back up again if he needs it when the time comes to take the battle to these 2 surviving enemies. and yet he just stubbornly refuses to use the repair kit. Maybe there's a very, very good reason for this, and I'm just not familiar enough with Swedish tank destroyers to understand why he's not using it. If so, please let me know in the comments, because it's really annoying me. Anyway, it's time to do or die. Now, he's a lot faster than the SU-130 PM. He's waited for him to... well, he's using him as bait, which is fair. The SU-130 had all of his health, and now he's getting ready to deliver a dose of surprise butt sex to the artillery. Or possibly the... no, it is going to be the artillery. Boom! Gotcha. Unfortunately, the P-44 is about to finish off the SU-130, who did his job well. You can't really ask for more than that from a teammate. And now it's just him and the P-44, who's presumably thinking, oh shit, not this guy, and puts a shot into his tracks instead. And this is where I start yelling at him. Use the repair kit! It's right, look, it's even highlighted for you. Press the 4 key. Whoa, finally. I just have this image of Shrimpcraft hammering every button on his number pad and managing to miss the 4 key every time he did it. But eventually he got there. Figured out just in time to start turning the tank the other way, which puts the fear of God into the P-44, quickly followed by a 105mm shell to seal the deal on his 7th kill and win the game. Although his reluctance to use that repair kit certainly didn't do him any favours, and it didn't do much for my blood pressure either. I'm pretty sure Shrimpcraft would like to give a shout out to the P-44 Pantera driver, without whose obstinate determination to overmatch the front of an S1 with a 90mm gun, Shrimpcraft would almost certainly not have collected that steel wall medal. And well done to Shrimpcraft and his teammate in the SU-130 PM, who managed to salvage victory from what looked like an almost certain defeat, even if Shrimpcraft did make a bit of a meal of it at the end. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.